All right, last couple things about Andrew Jackson. We just talked about how the Peggy Eaton affair ripped apart his cabinet. Again, Andrew Jackson, sort of the king of vetoes. He vetoes many internal improvements. Again, he's against Henry Clay's American System Plan, talked about tariffs and including improving infrastructure and things like that. And this struck a blow at nationalism. We were a growing country. We were very proud of our industrialization at the time and the fact that we had stemmed off an attack from the British. And so this is going to kind of drop down the patriotism and growth of America, or at least the idea of that one. And the biggest veto of all that Andrew Jackson had was called the Maysville Road veto. Okay, this is in 1830. And it was supposed to be a federally funded highway, of course, not concrete or anything like that, but a nice road at the time throughout the entire state of Kentucky, which is where Henry Clay was from. And it was going to link Lexington to Maysville. And Andrew Jackson shot it down because he believed it was unconstitutional. So again, we see sort of divisions now in the government between the House, the Senate, and of course the president, Andrew Jackson. Okay, here's a picture of Andrew Jackson. That's some sweet hair, Andrew Jackson. Look like a vampire. So one of the last things we'll talk about is the Webster-Hayne debate. This is going to be a 9-day debate starting in January of 1830. We have Daniel Webster. He is from Massachusetts. And then we have a man named Hayne, he's Robert Hayne. He's from South Carolina. So this whole debate is going to be about tariffs. So tariffs. Remember, the North liked tariffs, the South hated tariffs. So again, this is 9 days. This is in January of 1830. And it's also about land. So it's about land and tariffs. It began over new lands opening in the West. The problem is that Massachusetts did not want to settle or actually send settlers or have settlers sent to the new lands in the West because of the Louisiana Purchase. They said, look, we've got all this land over here that hasn't been purchased yet. And so we need to worry about selling this land first before we extend this to homesteaders and such in the West. So we've got, on the other side, we've got Robert Hayne, who is for this. He's for new land. And you can see kind of why, if we have sold land in places like, I don't know, Massachusetts, other areas, we're going to be able to tax that and things like that. So, focus on, you see the debate and why they had it, but it really illustrates another rift between the North and the South. New England, again, they don't want to allow for expansion. They liked taking advantage of the tariff system. And so we have this debate between them. So Robert Hayne of South Carolina, he's going to be condemned. He's going to condemn disloyalty of New England during the War of 1812. Remember, we talked about the Hartford Convention, how the New England wasn't wanting to take part in the embargo, and then in a very rare form, and actually one of the very first forms of potential secession, the Hartford Convention got together and almost seceded and went back to Britain. So Robert Hayne kind of brings that point up. He also brings up a few other points. We've got Webster in the top and we've got Hayne in the bottom. Another point that Robert Hayne brings up, he feels New England is selfish with these high tariffs, especially the tariff of abominations of 1828. Remember, South Carolina had threatened to secede here, so we're going back to South Carolina. They did not secede at the time, but here we are again, bringing this open wound still up about the tariffs. He claimed that John Calhoun's doctrine of nullification was the only way to safeguard minority interest in his section. So again, nullification comes up again. Again, this is foreshadowing what's going to happen prior to the Civil War. He didn't want the Union to break up, but he did want to protect Southern rights within the Union and under the Constitution. Again, this idea of nullification is that if it's not explicitly said in the Constitution, the federal government should not be able to do it. Okay, so it creates a rift between the South and the North. Okay, Daniel Webster, on the other hand, speaks up for New England. He's going to defend New England. He was sort of a godlike leader. He was a very prominent lawyer at the time. He was the leader of the American Bar Association, and he frequently went in front of Chief Justice John Marshall. So he was very well renowned as a lawyer and defended New England as a lawyer would do. Okay, so he went to the issue of the Union, and he insisted that people, not the states, had framed the Constitution. So the Union was paramount above all things. Okay? He hated the idea of nullification. He said the Supreme Court should judge the constitution of laws, or the nation would be torn up by revolution. So again, foreshadowing. Again, the court case that he's alluding to is Marbury versus Madison, where states should not have the rights to judge something as unconstitutional. It should be the Supreme Court. And he's known for a few famous quotes. One of them, liberty and union, now and forever, one and inseparable. Also, he's known for another famous quote, and you don't have to write this down, but you might want to write down Lincoln and Gettysburg Address, because one of the quotes that Daniel Webster has is government made for the people, made by the people, and answerable to the people. So you can see the definite inspiration for Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address by Daniel Webster. So Webster, again, he's going to make the idea of states' rights position pure close to treason. Those are fighting words, will be fighting words. Each side felt like after this 9-day debate that their side had won. Webster's reply to Hayne was printed out in an argument and for the Union to be cemented together. One of these people on Webster's reply was Abraham Lincoln. There was a speech there. And many felt that Daniel Webster played a hand in winning the Civil War because he sort of aroused a generation of Northerners who wanted to keep this idea of a union. So prior to Abraham Lincoln, we've got Daniel Webster sort of inspiring our entire nation and really motivating them prior and during the Civil War. Okay. Last thing here, Jefferson Day, Jefferson's birthday, actually in 1830. There is a dinner at the White House, and Jackson has sort of been quiet on all these Southern grievances, especially South Carolina. And so remember, Calhoun's going to resign 2 years after this in 1832. But at this particular dinner, it's a pretty heated dinner. The states' writers decided to kind of find out how Jackson felt about states' rights. And so they give these series of toasts along, what would Thomas Jefferson have believed? Would he have wanted us to go towards nullification? And so the South assumes, because Andrew Jackson hadn't said anything, that he would speak up for states' rights. Remember, Jackson, again, had sort of campaigned on a promise of, not necessarily trusting the federal government, thinking they had too much power. But again, as we've seen before, presidents realize once they get into office that you need a strong federal government to get things accomplished. And Andrew Jackson had said at this toast very plainly, he said, "Our Union, it must be preserved." To which John Calhoun said, "The Union, next to our liberty, most dear." So again, we see foreshadowing of things to come, sectionalism, decline of nationalism, and of course, the nullification crisis on the horizon. Okay. Thank you guys for that. That's the end. Hope you got these down. Hope you wrote down a few notes. Ask me if you have any questions. Deuces.